Good evening, friends. Welcome to a special edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We're coming live to you on breaking news. Suzanne Morphew, missing over 1,235 days, over 3.5 years, recovered and identified today. This is big news. It came out a few hours ago. Ed and I, as a matter of fact, were out to lunch just a short time later, 4 o'clock our time. This news broke. So I want to say thank you to everybody that's joining in from the Patreon and the Police and Crime chat group on Facebook. Ed, how you doing tonight? Thank you for coming in on a little bit of notice.
Yes, no problem. It's good. We had a good day until the commute sucked, but the food in the company was great.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to just kick back and hang out with you. But this is a case we both covered extensively. We've had her stepbrother Tommy on with us. We watched Mike King and Profiling Evil do so much stuff with mapping evil and tracking all of the searchers that Andy, her brother, came from Indiana to search for Suzanne, his beloved sister. But after 1,235 days, her remains, and people or some folks are reporting her body. These are her remains, perhaps skeletal remains, I would say 100%, obviously, recovered and identified. And we're going to get into it, and we're going to talk about that process because Ed, as everybody knows, is a crime scene and evidence collection CSI expert. And that's why it's a big benefit to this community to have you here for cases like this, so we can get real valid information on how that process goes. But Ed, I just wanted to get your thoughts on Suzanne Morphew. I mean, we covered it extensively. We talked about a lot of the evidence collection with the bicycle at the home.
The lack thereof.
Right. We won't get into that tonight. But quickly, just your thoughts before we go to this little news piece.
Well, prayers to the family for the recovery of her, and may she rest in peace. Now, there's a lot more investigation that has to occur.
Yeah.
And, originally the husband was arrested and then he was cut loose. So now we have to look at this as the new starting point for this investigation and see what links, if any, we can find with this area and her and possible suspects.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you just said it's the starting point. This restarts the whole investigatory process because, as we know, Suzanne Morphew, 49 years young when she went missing, May 10th of 2020, reported by her neighbor across the street. She is a mother of two children, two girls, Mallory and Maisie. They both are on Dad's side. They're taking their father's side and saying that he's innocent, but we know that the prosecutor said that this case is subject to reopening if they recovered Suzanne Morphew. And that was Linda Stanley, the prosecutor at the time. Those were her exact words, Ed. And I don't know if you recall it, but she said they were talking about waiting for things to thaw out, and we never really heard anything else develop after that.
Right. They were going to search the side of a mountain that was under snow, and
correct.
That was back then, but it was radio silence ever since.
Yeah. So Barry Morphew's charges were dropped on my birthday, April 19th of 2022. So a year and a half has gone by since those charges were dropped. We didn't hear anything about thawing of the change of seasons. They were talking about waiting until the snow, which I think they said was 7 feet deep. Mm-hmm. The snow, they wanted that to thaw. Don't hold me to that number. It was deep, and they were looking for it to thaw, and they were going to search in particular areas. But this recovery today, Ed, as you and I both found out, and the world probably found out, was a unrelated case. They were searching for who knows what. Was it an unrelated homicide case? Was it somebody who went missing that was hiking? The Colorado Bureau of Investigation came across Suzanne Morphew's remains on Friday, the 22nd. It took 5 days for the identification. So what's your thoughts on that, Ed?
Well, I pray to God that they meticulously documented the crime scene and collected the human remains to forensic standards. Obviously, the 5 days, I would say that that would be DNA over dental.
Yeah.
Because dental should be relatively quick. But again, dental may not be that quick if they don't know it's her.
Yeah.
But they did have a missing persons case on her. So in the missing person file for in Colorado, the dental record should have been there to help make an identification. In addition, so should elimination DNA.
Right, because we talked with Dr. Larry Dobrin, the forensic odontologist. That's a forensic dentist, for those of you who don't know the fancy talk. And he talked about the pulp in the teeth, and it stays there for really indefinitely unless it's completely destroyed. Let's look at this piece real quick. I want to say thank you to all the channel members. Rebecca, thank you for all of the folks that are piling in and paying respects. Let's keep up the hearts and prayer emojis in the chat for Suzanne Morphew. As we know, her father, her father passed away, Gene, before he got to find out what happened in this case. And Andy, he came from Indiana searching for his sister. So let's send strength, prayers, and positive vibes. Of course, it's always about the victims' families, the victims themselves. We give them all of our strength and prayers. Let's look at this piece, Ed, and we'll come right back to everybody's questions.
Good afternoon. We begin with a massive development in a case that received national headlines. Investigators say they found the body of Suzanne Morphew, a mom who went missing on Mother's Day back in 2020. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation says they found the remains in Saguache County last Friday. Today, now 1,235 days after she went missing, Suzanne's remains have been confirmed to be found.
Her disappearance led to a massive search. Her husband faced charges for her murder, but prosecutors dropped those charges just 1 month before the trial. 9 News reporter Mark Salinger has been following this case since the very beginning. Mark, they haven't said exactly where this body was found. What do we know?
Yeah, Kim and Al, it's an absolutely wild update this afternoon that none of us expected to get on this case that we've been following for years. We don't know exactly where they found her body at this point. CBI says investigators were searching near Moffett for an unrelated investigation when they found those remains. That's northwest of the Great Sand Dunes. They have not said how she died or released a cause of death or really any other information about her. At this point, CBI says it has not made any arrests, but it's just the latest development in a very complicated case.
It's been more than 3 years since Suzanne Morphew was last seen. 3 years since the day law enforcement believed she was killed. Investigators say this is the final picture Suzanne took on the afternoon of May 9th, 2020. It's the last piece of evidence that shows her alive. She sent the picture to a man in Michigan she was having an affair with. Suzanne was reported missing the following afternoon. The first deputies to arrive at the Morphew home found her mountain bike nearby in the woods off the road.
Ed, I don't have to remind you. I know you're probably getting flashbacks on this.
Mm-hmm.
This is May 10th, the day she was reported missing. And that's the bike that they wheeled down or up that hill and let Barry Morphew put his hands on it and other people. Just horrific.
I'm gonna call the husband and see what type of bike she has.
My daughter, she's at Barry's house.
Okay. All right.
Her husband, Barry, arrived home that evening after he says he was on a work trip in Broomfield. He immediately asks if an animal could have killed her.
Lion? Yeah, it was just like lion. A lion? Mountain?
You see how he did that, Ed? And I'm not going to keep stopping it. This is the last time I stop it. What husband comes on the scene of his wife being missing and saying, could a lion have gotten her? I mean, I don't know, man. I know there is lots of wildlife in that area, but like, why go right to that? I don't know. Just to me, it's just odd.
For months, state and federal investigators searched for Suzanne and any clues that might lead to answers.
Oh, okay. All right.
Her husband, Barry, arrived home that evening after he says he was on a work trip in Broomfield. He immediately asks if an animal could have killed her.
Lion? Yeah, it was just like lion. A lion? Mountain?
For months, state and federal investigators searched for Suzanne and any clues that might lead to answers. On May 13th, 2020, her bike helmet was found near the road. On May 22nd of that year, the FBI searched through a construction site in Salida that Barry had been working on.
I believe the house is just below us right now.
In September of 2020, Suzanne's brother Andy couldn't stand by and watch any longer. He organized a team of dozens of volunteers from around the country to search for Suzanne. Each search turned up few results.
Please, we'll do whatever it takes to bring you back.
It wasn't until May 5th, 2021, nearly a year after Suzanne went missing, that Barry was arrested.
And I wouldn't bring charges unless I was confident.
District Attorney Linda Stanley charged Barry with murder in the disappearance of his missing wife. She didn't reveal what evidence she had, but promised the public there was enough to convict him.
And it's about all the individuals that knew her and loved her and cared about her.
After a year of preliminary hearings and pretrial court appearances, prosecutors dropped the charges against Barry, saying they don't have a case without the testimony of the expert witnesses the judge ruled to exclude from trial.
That's what innocence looks like right there.
How do you feel, Barry?
The Colorado Bureau of Investigation says it has told the family. I spoke with Barry Morphew.
Did you catch what the attorney said there, Ed?
Yes, I caught it the first time.
What did she say?
That's what innocence looks like right there.
Ugh.
His attorney today, just after the news release went out. When I talked to her, she didn't know the development that Suzanne was found. I told her on the phone. That leads us to believe, or at least question, whether or not investigators told Barry about the news that his wife's remains had been found. Again, at this point, we're told that no one has been arrested today, Kim.
Mark, you have covered this from the beginning. It's taken some crazy turns involving the district attorney, the investigation, but it all comes back to the fact that Suzanne was missing, presumed dead and missing. This is such a critical piece of evidence.
Oh yeah, this was what they were waiting for. When they dismissed those, when they dropped those charges just about a year ago at this point, the district attorney there was saying, we are waiting for the body to be found. At that point, we can bring charges back. It is important to note that they can bring charges against Barry again if it comes to that. At this point, we have no idea whether or not he is a suspect or even wanted in this case. But if that turns out to be a case, they can bring charges again.
Yeah, well, there's so much more to cover, and we're glad you've been on it from the beginning. Thank you.
So there you have it, Ed. That covered it pretty good. It gave a pretty good overview of what has taken place, what has transpired. A lot of people, I made that poll in the chat. A lot of people pressed number one, but a couple of people said guilty by public opinion. I feel like there was a lot of evidence in this case over the time when we saw him at that Broomfield job where he was taking a lot of garbage bags and doing a lot of shady, hold on. I didn't want to say the S word out there. This is a family channel, but seriously, the events that led up to Suzanne's disappearance, and now we know death, her two daughters on Mother's Day. I don't know any kids who, unless they hate their mom, take Mother's Day to go on a camping trip. Me, I never would leave my wife, or I go and see my mom when she was alive every Mother's Day, if humanly possible. If not, I'm on the phone with her. But the husband goes on some kind of training for the fire department, which is kind of hogwash as well. So there's so many things that surround this that right out of the gate seems very suspicious. And I wanted to just talk to you about evidence collection. When you have skeletal remains in the outdoors, in the open, arguably this is the open, and they say that Moffett population of 108 people, very small place, very low population, probably high wildlife. Can you walk the audience through what they're up against with a body, hot, cold, all the different seasons?
Now, remember, it was Mother's Day when she went missing. So what we have here is we don't have many details. So we know that she was found in a wooded area that they were searching. Now, was she deposited on top of the terra firma, on top of the ground, or was she in a shallow grave? Because these things make a difference on how the body will decompose, and how animals and other critters that may feed on the body may have access to it. Again, was she wrapped? Was she somehow bound? Was she put into a shallow grave where somebody attempted to throw some chemicals on top of her, thinking that might expedite the decomp process. And I'll just tell you this now, there's no scientific studies that prove lime does that. It just masks smell. So it really doesn't expedite the decomposition. But having said that, okay, if she's above ground, and given the seasons that we went through and the wildlife, the indigenous wildlife there, there would be, I wouldn't expect to find any human tissue left. I would expect to find the bones have been scattered by the wildlife. I would expect to find evidence of the indigenous wildlife having chewed on the bones. And this is where the forensic anthropologist is going to play a big role in here. Now, if the body is in a shallow grave, okay, and if it's in a shallow grave, not masked by any chemicals, well, the indigenous wildlife that live in the soil will feed on the body. The body will decomp under the ground. And again, I don't know the water table of this area. Is it high? Is it low? Is it dry? Is it humid? Don't know anything about this, but all of these things will affect the rate of decomp. Again, during the summer, you would expect it to, the hotter temperatures would cause more decomp. During the winter, the colder temperatures would freeze those bacteria and funguses and mold that would be eating on the body and slow them down. But she went through several years of seasonal cycles. Like I said, underground, if she wasn't wrapped or cocooned or placed in some kind of package, again, the body should be just bones at this point in time. And the one good thing about it, if it's depending on the depth of the grave, some of the animals may not be able to locate her and find her, but others will and could dig that body up and start to create some scatter. So there's a lot of variables here, but hopefully they found most of this victim's remains and brought in a forensic anthropologist to start looking at the bones, extracted the DNA, got the teeth for identification and the DNA for identification. I'm guessing it was a combination of both IDs here. Also, you'd want the forensic anthropologist to get an inventory of all the bones to see what's here and what may be missing. So if additional searches are needed in the area. But, you know, we're talking, like I said, we're talking years, but it still may be able to be found. In addition, you want the anthropologist to look at the bones to see if they could see, to help establish cause of death. If there's ballistic damage to the bones, or if there's knife damage to the bones, the ribs, whatever the case may be. If the hyoid bone is still there and it's broken, signs of strangulation, things like this.
The drawback to the amount of time that has gone by, and this takes us to so many different cases, like especially Gilgo Beach, the Gilgo 4, and Long Island serial killer. When you have skeletal remains, you're limited to what the bone structure is on the skeletal remains, right? If the person was shot, unless it hit a bone and cracked the bone.
Yeah.
But if it was a shot like we saw so many times in the NYPD, where someone gets shot and goes right in and right out, you're not going to be able to detect that here.
Well, it doesn't hit a bone because you're not going to have any organs that would help you determine that. You're not going to have any skin tissue. So, I mean, at this point, like they said, they recovered remains, human remains.
The person was drugged, like we talked about that deer dart that was found in the dryer, right? Or the tranquilizer. So if that in fact would happen to her, at this point, you're limited to what you can do with the remains that you have, correct?
Yeah. If there is no ballistic damage or knife damage or maybe even blunt force trauma damage, like broken ribs, somebody got gut punched, or the hyoid bone, like I was saying earlier. If you don't have any of these things, it's going to be very difficult to determine the cause of death. Now, manner of death is a whole nother story. If she's buried, well, That's a crime. She didn't bury herself. Okay. So somebody brought her there and somebody buried her. Okay. So we know right away we were dealing with a crime. Now, if she, like I said, if she was just found on the surface of the soil there, on the topography, whatever, and scattered by the indigenous wildlife, it's going to be, and we didn't find any evidence of broken hyoid bones, broken bones, ballistic damage to the bones, knife damage to the bone. It'd be very difficult to get a manner.
You know, and Angela People, she said, you know, wonder if they found clothing. And that's a whole nother thing. And there's just so much, there's so many possibilities to this. Was there clothing left? Was she, in fact, was that the location she was murdered? Was she murdered in a different location and dumped there? And, you know, I listen, I'm not trying to be insensitive here, but these are extreme possibilities that this, in fact, this location that we're going to put up on the screen, which is 40 miles from Maysville, it looks like 40 miles south. This doesn't necessarily mean this is the place where she met her demise.
That's correct.
Anywhere, and you know, we are all picking at straws here. So you're going to hear a lot of people, Ed, you correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to hear a lot of people speculate on it, but until the facts come out, until the complete investigation comes out, nobody's going to know.
Well, here's the deal. If she's wearing clothing, which I suspect she is, you know, that's going to help with the recovery of the human remains and also the identification. And don't forget Lecard's exchange principle, right? Somebody had to touch her, somebody had to pick her up, somebody had to bury her here. And there's a contact between her and whoever did all of this. Okay, so you have to search that clothing very thoroughly for hairs and fibers, foreign hairs and fibers, possible DNA. And, you know, it's going to be commingled now because the body is breaking down inside of the clothing and so forth. But it should protect the bones to some degree from the critters, but others will get to it. And no matter what kind of clothing you're wearing, they'll tear it apart. So there are still so many different aspects, but you still have to search that grave. If there is a grave, you have to search that grave. Also, even though it went through multiple seasons, if it was a surface recovery, then you have to carefully search the surfaces there to see if you can find footwear impressions, tire impressions. Did an ATV bring her back here? You know, anything like that could potentially show how she was brought into this location and deposited where she was. Right.
Did someone have to use hiking gear to get up there?
Yeah.
And so forth, because we don't know. Harley62 put a great question in, and hold the questions to the end. Hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon for the questions. But she says, question, can you tell if there's toxic materials in her body, like tranquilizer and stuff?
It depends. It depends on how fast it would have been metabolized and whether she was alive to the point where it could have been metabolized and gotten into the bloodstream and then deposited in hair. If hair is present, you might be able to find that. I'm like you're saying, I'm doubting there was any tissue left, but if there is, then you can potentially look. I mean, the vitreous fluids in the eyes are gone, most likely at this point. So that would be the most prominent location to search for that kind of toxic material.
So you're talking about the fluids in the eye sockets and the eyeballs, if they are still there, correct?
Yeah, they're not there. They're not there. They're gone. That's where you would have went if there was an intact full body.
Right.
Right.
Let's go to this next piece. And again, we're going to go over a condensed version of the timeline. For those of you who aren't following this case or haven't followed this case, let us know by putting a 1 in the chat if you have been following it. Put a 2 if you do not know anything about this Suzanne Morphew case. Mother, 49 years young at the time, May 10th of 2020, reported missing on Mother's Day. And now 1,235 days later, we have her remains recovered. So let's let this play.
Breaking news tonight. The remains of a Chaffee County woman missing more than 3 years recovered. And good evening, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Ann Trujillo.
And I'm Shannon Ogden. We are going to begin with that breaking news. The remains of Suzanne Morphew have been found in Saguache County.
And this comes 3 years after she was reported missing from her home in Salida. And Denver 7 Chief Investigative Reporter Tony Kovaleski is joining us here now with what we know right now. Tony.
Well, and you're here. We've been on the phones all afternoon. People scrambling, trying to understand what happened, why it happened, and trying to get as many details as possible. Basically, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation has been scrambling, keeping a lot of information tight. But here's what we know. It's the murder mystery that for 3 years has captured the hearts and minds of Colorado and the entire country. When the news broke this afternoon, still a lot of unanswered questions. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation confirmed Suzanne Morphew's remains were located in the area of Moffett and Saguache.
I just want to just point out these maps that are being shown, Ed, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right on this. The location has not been put out, so now the news is putting just the town of Moffett. That exact location on this map that they just showed here, remains found. That is not necessarily the actual location of where the remains were found. It could be somewhere to the right, somewhere to the left. Law enforcement didn't put out the exact location. Ed?
No, that's correct. So it's just showing the town of Moffett.
Right. So don't get confused. Don't be swayed by someone to say, oh, right here, this is where she was found. And people are going to go into Google Earth and start looking at that area and peeking around. Nobody knows exactly where, and it's for an investigative reason. They don't want that out there. They don't want people to come and start trying to gawk or look if it's reachable. Correct, Ed?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
We have Moffett in Saguache County. She was first reported missing in Chaffee County. We've also learned investigators have stumbled upon some other issues, and we want to take you to that story now. We've learned investigators stumbled on the remains while searching in the area on an unrelated case. The CBI is electing not to disclose the specific location where Morphew's remains were located or the state of her remains. Here's a timeline to get you up to date. Suzanne Morphew was reported missing Mother's Day weekend in 2020. Nearly 1 year later, her husband, Barry, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Then, in April of last year, prosecutors dropped all charges against Barry Morphew. Earlier this year, Barry's attorney requested an investigation of the prosecution claiming misconduct. 5 days ago, investigators located a body in Saguache County. Today, as we reported, the CBI positively confirmed they are the remains of Suzanne Morphew. The announcement comes 4 months after Suzanne's husband and 2 daughters gave this exclusive interview to Good Morning America.
It's very hurtful to lose your reputation and your...
So for those of you who haven't been following this case, this is over a year ago on, I believe, Good Morning America. This is Barry Morphew, who was charged with first-degree murder of Suzanne Morphew. Those charges were since dropped and removed. But this is him. This is the husband of Suzanne Morphew.
Integrity.
Of Suzanne Morphew. The announcement comes 4 months after Suzanne's husband and 2 daughters gave this exclusive interview to Good Morning America.
It's very hurtful to lose your reputation and your integrity.
CBI also announcing no arrests have been made since the body was identified. Important fact here. When charges were dropped against Barry Morphew, prosecutors said it was too difficult to pursue first-degree murder charges without a body. Now they have the remains. They have the body. Shannon.
All right, Tony, thank you.
Yeah, so that's the big question. Will they now recharge Barry Morphew? And that remains to be seen, and it's a possibility.
Let's see if any evidence is found from where the body was recovered that links directly back to him.
Right. But I do recall Linda Stanley saying that with the Suzanne Morphew case here, that all they were looking for was to recover her remains, to recover her body. And without that, it was going to be difficult, as they just said, to go forward and prosecute Barry Morphew. But now they have that. And that reporter brought that a good point up, because I could get that press conference and play that. I don't want to bore you guys with it. Ed, I want to ask you quickly, 5 days it took for them to make this identification. For the 2,500 people who are here watching, what goes on from recovery, from them coming across these remains? They weren't looking for it. It was a different investigation, a different case, to the recovery of those remains, and now fast forward to 5 days.
So as soon as they found the body, notifications went out. The crime scene team was notified. The medical examiners, investigators were notified. I hope an anthropologist was notified to come out to the scene to organize and develop the plans that we'd use to recover the remains and sift through the soil for additional forensic evidence, trace evidence, and so forth. And then photograph it extensively, measure it, sketch it, 3D laser scan it. Depending if it is a shallow grave, then you look at the soil, you examine the soil thoroughly. You get soil underneath the body. You just don't stop digging after you remove the body out of a shallow grave, if that's in fact the case. And then you search all that soil. You may take some soil samples to have analyzed for both mineral and chemical contents to see if there's anything going on there. You might collect some dead insects if there's dead insects with the body. Gather those up, bring them to the laboratory, have the insects examined.
Why would you do that with the insects, Ed?
Well, if she was in fact poisoned and the insects were feeding on the victim and the insects died, then you potentially can find the source of the toxin and the poison in the insects.
That's fascinating. Whoa, wait a minute. Hold on here. So you're telling me that if you recover insects and test them, you could potentially extract toxin?
Again, if she was poisoned and they're feeding on her and they're dying, they may die from the poison as well, or maybe they died for whatever reason. But if they were feeding on her and there's poison in the system, there's a possibility that you can get that. Now, I'll say this as well. In this case, there's no mystery because she's been identified. Like we had a case in New York City where a college student from Connecticut did not return home for a holiday break, and the female student was having a dispute with her boyfriend, and he was estranged, and the squad suspected that the boyfriend had met her at a Queens mall and then abducted her and then killed her and dismembered her in his brother's auto body shop in Long Island. Warrants were obtained, went out to the auto body shop and pulled the floor traps for the sewer out of the floor. And inside of there were hairs, and inside of there were maggots and blood. Okay, the maggots were collected. The maggots were sent to the lab. They were ground down and tested, and they found her DNA in that the maggots were feeding on her. They found her DNA in those maggots.
Wow. All right. You're blowing my mind with this stuff, Ed. So how does this recovery take the 5 days to identify? Is this now through dental records? Could you go into that aspect of it? What happens in
I
those
would think
5 days?
I would think dental records would go first, because now when after the full photography and recovery and mapping and all that's done at the field, all the human remains have to be packaged up and then brought back to the medical examiner's office. Now, I'm not sure if this location is a coroner system or a medical examiner system. I hope it's a medical examiner system, and if it's a coroner's one, I hope it went to a very seasoned pathologist with a very seasoned anthropologist assisting, because now they have to inventory what's here. Are there missing bones? If so, which bones are missing? Go back out and look for them. Now, so the inventory everything, photograph everything, examine each bone individually if that's all that's left, and then the clothing. If there is clothing with the bones, then the clothing would have to be separated, and the clothing has to be examined, separate, photographed, searched for DNA, search for hairs and fibers, search for any other trace evidence, any blood, anything like that may be on there. So then it takes time to do all of this, and then the anthropologist working with the DNA, they would have to make a determination as to where they're going to attempt to do this. Also, the odontologist may be involved in this little powwow. They get together and say, okay, we'll use a pulp of from a tooth, or we'll cut into the bone marrow of a long bone from the leg and try to extract the DNA from there. So whatever methodology they chose, then they will enact that plan and get the genetic material, get it over to the DNA lab, have the DNA, if the DNA is present, first of all, determine if it's present, extract it, amplify it, get a profile, and then match it to the elimination profile they should have had on file from the missing persons case.
Right, right. Let's go to just one more little piece here, and then we're going to take some questions, Ed, because you're blowing the chat away. And there's a lot of people saying that it is a elected coroner system in that area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, again, it's not the end all. It's not the end of the world, because, again, when these remains get back into, they probably job it out. I think I have the actual location where the identification was made. I'm going to look at my articles. If you guys have it in the chat to my internet detectives, put it in the chat or send it to me on social. If those of you who are new here, please subscribe. We are retired New York City police detectives. Ed and I are also 9/11 World Trade Center first responders, but Ed is a forensic expert, CSI expert. He knows how to process crime scenes. Over what, 2,500, Ed? Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Yeah, so he's processed over 2,500 crime scenes in his career, and is now in his retirement teaching. And he worked also with the New York City Medical Examiner's Office in the DNA lab, correct?
As the director of forensic training.
Sorry, I didn't give him.
So just want to be.
Yes, thank you, Ed. So he's got a ton of experience in this field. We're all, grateful for you taking the time out to explain this stuff to us. Again, if you guys could give Ed and I the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all things social media, will be greatly appreciated. Let's take a listen to this. Oh, you want to answer that, Ed, before?
Yes, they can. If there's hair present, they can test the hair for toxins and chemicals and drugs. And also there was a question about bone marrow earlier. I think I just answered it, but yes, they can search bone marrow for the presence of toxins as well.
And Ed, thank you for that. And thank you for that question. And Dusty Blue, I think Ed wishes he was there. I think Ed wishes he was on a lot of these cases because a lot of times you guys don't see the passion that I see in Ed Wallace when we have our private conversations. I wish that I could, not secretly, I wish I could just record it. Like, how they have real house, living in a house with somebody. I'd love to record the conversations, because the way Ed speaks and talks about this stuff with me, I get my own education from it. So it's unbelievable. Let's go to this little piece, because this is, again, these keep just explaining in small, short pieces about the case. So let's take a listen.
Breaking news tonight. The remains of a Chaffee County woman missing more than 3 years recovered. And good evening, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Ann Trujillo.
And I'm Shannon Ogden. We are going to begin with that breaking news. The remains of Suzanne Morphew have been found in Saguache County.
And this comes 3 years after she was reported missing from her home in Salida. And Denver 7 Chief Investigative Reporter Tony Kovaleski is joining us here now with what we know right now. Tony.
Well, and you're here. We've been on the phones all afternoon, people scrambling, trying to understand what happened, why it happened, and trying to get as many details as possible. Basically, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation has been scrambling, keeping a lot of information tight, but here's what we know. It's the murder mystery that for 3 years has captured the hearts and minds of Colorado and the entire country. When the news broke this afternoon, still a lot of unanswered questions. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation confirmed Suzanne Morphew's remains were located in the area of Moffett in Saguache County. She was first reported missing in Chaffee County.
40
We've
miles
also
away.
learned investigators have stumbled upon some other issues, and we want to take you to that story now. We've learned investigators stumbled on the remains while searching in the area on an unrelated case. The CBI is electing not to disclose the specific location where Morphew's remains were located or the state of her remains. Here's a timeline to get you up to date. Suzanne Morphew was reported missing Mother's Day weekend in 2020. Nearly 1 year later, her husband, Barry, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. Then, in April of last year, prosecutors dropped all charges against Barry Morphew. Earlier this year, Barry's attorney requested an investigation of the prosecution claiming misconduct. 5 days ago, investigators located a body in Saguache County. Today, as we reported, the CBI positively confirmed they are the remains of Suzanne Morphew.
So there it is. Ed, you saw some questions in the chat. Someone was saying something about fingernails. Do you want to address that? Did you see that?
Yeah. What was the exact question about the fingernails? Is he talking about fingernails and toxicology?
I'm trying to go back and find it because the chat is moving so fast. Oh, you didn't see it?
I didn't see it. I missed it. Sorry.
I was looking at you, and I thought that you had a reaction to it.
No.
All right.
I will say this, that many people are under the misimpression that after you die, your fingernails still grow, and it's not true. Your skin shrinks, and it just makes the fingernail look like it's growing.
Interesting. All right. It's going to be impossible for me to find that question. Whoever put that question, put it in the chat again, and I'll grab it when I see it. Skin under fingernails, Lobo. I don't think that was the question.
If there's still fingernails present, then you'd want to scrape those fingernails to see if there's any skin underneath them, any foreign skin from maybe she scratched the assailant or whatever the case may be. So again, if there are nails that are still present, you bag those hands appropriately and you bring it back to the laboratory and you look at it in the proper lighting, and documentation has to occur, photographs, everything. And then you do your scrapings and see if there's hairs there or foreign skin cells, blood, or, whatever that case may be. And then you run it through analysis.
There you go. Thanks, Ed. I just found something I want to play. Thank you for all the questions. We're going to go to the chat in a few minutes. Here's just another, give me a second here.
Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
Okay, here we go.
Investigation saying remain.
Sorry about that, folks. That's not what I wanted to show you, Ed. Sorry.
I did see somebody say that the nails are skin, and
Yes.
that's not accurate. Nails are keratin. Skin is not keratin.
Okay, there we go. I trust Ed because I know that you know about it. Let me go to a brief timeline because I told everyone that I was going to go over just a brief timeline with you guys. So I want to get this up on the screen. Let me see if this looks, it's going to be hard for you guys to see it, but I'll highlight it. May 10th of 2020, Suzanne Morphew is reported missing. May 11th, search crews are called to the area she was believed to be in near her Chaffee County home in Salida. And that's when we saw, all of the searches going on with the sheriffs, with local people, boots on the ground, local community folks coming out. May 15, items belonging to Suzanne were found. I believe that was the bicycle helmet. Remember that? The bike was found, and then the helmet was found on a separate day. May 17th of 2020, Barry, the husband of Suzanne, shares a video. That's that bull plea, 20-something seconds. We love you. We want you to come back. I'll spare us all that video. He shares a video with the public asking for help with finding her. It can be viewed at the bottom of this article. No, thank you. May 19th, authorities searched the Morphew home. Remember that, Ed? There was the search where they used plastic bags, and Barry Morphew went and asked them if they needed a Ziploc bag. Remember that, Ed?
Yes, I remember.
I see you laughing.
No, I'm not laughing. I'm crying.
May 22nd of 2020, a separate residential property is searched where a concrete foundation had just been poured. That was, those of you in the chat remember this, put a 1 in the chat if you remember. The FBI, they went to that job site where he was working. It was a concrete foundation. The poor owner of that place had FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, they started sifting and digging through that property. Ed, you saw FBI agents sifting dirt, right?
Yes.
A familiar thing for you because you were one of the only NYPD detectives to do the body farm course with the FBI. Isn't that so?
That is correct. I was the first.
Yes. And you were proud because when you talked to Dr. Murray Marks in regards to that, I saw the glee, the smile on your face from ear to ear. But that was good that you got in there. May 5th, 2021, a year later, Barry Morphew is collared. He's arrested. April 19th. I thought it was the night. They say 18th here. I thought it was the 19th, but April 18th, Barry's murder charges are dismissed. Everybody was shocked by that. Fast forward to September 27th. Today, CBI announces El Paso County Coroner, Ed. The El Paso County Coroner identifies remains found in Saguache County. I know I'm butchering that, as belonging to that of Suzanne Morphew. Again, troubling to say the least, but again, this is a step in the right direction. And I wanted to ask you, everybody wants to see somebody arrested, whoever is responsible for this. I just wanted to get your thoughts on how long this process could possibly take before they can narrow either back down Barry Morphew or another, because there was a few other people, like a nephew that came forward early on, and he was making some statements, and there was like this huge $200,000 reward given or offered by the family, and then a friend of the family. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on how long this forensics can take to get matched up to Barry. Do they have Barry Morphew's DNA? Do they get a chance to match? These are all questions that our chatters want to know.
Well, it's going to take some time. First of all, we got to see what kind of answers we can get from the crime scene and the recovery and the body. Next, you got to start looking at. It should have already been done. There should have been already extensive searches of cell phone towers, of the suspect's cell phone and vicinity to this location. You have to look at vehicle movements, and if it wasn't already done, it should have downloaded from the infotainment system and GPS systems in the vehicle of any suspects, their movements in and around the time of the disappearance, to track all this down and see if some kind of connection can be made with where this body was recovered, that location. That's all going to have to be done. I hope they've done this already. Full geofencing, cell phone towers, triangulating what phones were active in the area of where the body was recovered from a specific time period.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to all of the forensics and the computer. I know the cars were all looked at and downloaded. Suzanne, they had that white Range Rover or Land Rover, and there was like a lot of controversy about DNA in there. There's a whole slew of stuff. But let's go to the super chats and the people who have become channel members. Jacob from Chaos Diving is here. Jacob and his better half. They're out there doing God's work. They're working with Doug Bishop and United Search Corps. They're working with everybody and anybody to find loved ones, missing loved ones, and bringing people home to their families. So if you're not subscribed to Chaos Divers, Jacob, and his better half, Lindsay, go on over there and subscribe to them like right away. Don't run and leave here just yet, but when we're done, go on over. Let's say thank you to Paul Schoenbaum for becoming a YouTube member early in the show. Thank you, Paul, if you're still here. Caroline, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. She says, everyone say a prayer for the Mormon family and the Morphews tonight. Absolutely. Andy and his dad who passed away before Suzanne, in this case, could get a resolution. We send him strength and positive vibes. Beth, thank you for the super sticker. Thank you, Sky Blue, for being a new member. Cheryl, welcome, and thank you for speaking out on behalf of victims and their families. Amen. This is what we do here. These are just the super chats. We've got to go over them, Ed. Lisa Oldhams sends in a $5 super chat, and she says, this is to you. Ed, do you think those big game tranquilizer darts could have hit her bones, leaving marks or toxins. That's a good one.
100% possible. If you know, the bone, as Murray Marks likes to say, Dr. Marks likes to say, the bone has a memory. Okay. And it doesn't lose it unless it was, you know, eaten up by critters. But if that dart hit bone, and if it was strong enough dart that was able to penetrate the bone and get into the bone marrow, that evidence, if the bone is still intact, should still be there.
Wow. He called the bone an amazing tissue, and I questioned that, but he said, yeah, it is. So interesting. Thank you, Lisa, for that super chat and that great question. Thank you, Susie, for becoming a member. Carl Webster says, hello from Australia. Put another prawn on the Barbie. Do they say that over there, or am I just being silly?
Oh, here we go again.
Okay, they're fine. Now that they have a crime scene, can they use mobile phone data to see who was on that area?
Well, you would think that, you know, they would have that information on their first suspect, the husband, already. But yeah, it's going to have to go back to the time of when she went missing. From that point on, they'd have to search that area, and you'd have to look at the cell phone towers and see if those records are still there. Given the time frame, hopefully it is. The data is still there and retrievable, and then you could isolate this area and whatever cell phone towers ping for this particular area, and then you'll have to do an extensive search. Also, you're going to be looking at traffic cameras. You know, this is a very rural area with a very small population. I doubt they have red light cameras or speed cameras. I doubt they have license plate readers or things like we have back home here that could assist them with that. But still, once you get if you can get the cell phone information and then you can target an individual, then you can get warrants to do deeper searches and identify vehicles. And find the vehicles, get the information. Yeah, I doubt if, you know, the vehicles still have it because they tend to overwrite, as our auto crime expert told us. Tommy, yeah. So
here's attorney Melanie Little chiming in with the $20 super chat. Thank you, Melanie. So glad my two besties are covering this live. We appreciate your support and also everything that you do for the community, and the great coverage today going out to the pretrial hearings for Rex Heuermann. You know, this was something that we had to get on and cover quick. Otherwise, we were going to be talking about that. Hashtag Ed, hashtag DutyRon. We're going to take 5 or 10 minutes of questions. I got one last thing that I want to show you guys. I'm not sure why this isn't playing right. Interesting. So there you have it. I think we really have covered this pretty strongly. Ed, everyone's asking, do you have a channel? I guess
this is my channel.
Yeah, maybe they were new. Maybe those people, whoever asked that, was new. But yeah, this is
my channel. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe.
There you go. Thank you, Ed. Anyways, I wanted to go to the chat and just see if there was any targeted questions towards either of us as it pertains to Suzanne Morphew. Again, we want to keep her family, you know, the Mormon family, her stepbrother Tommy. He's been communicating back and forth with me. Tommy Owens. He was on the show with us in the past. He's been following, obviously, this case. He really had such a wonderful relationship with Suzanne. He came on and graced us with his presence. He was kind enough to reach out and talk with me about this, and really they're heartbroken, you know. But again, this is one step towards closure for them, and I don't even like to use that word closure because they never will get it. But
no such thing.
There's no such thing. But
you live with it. You learn to live with it.
Right. But at least they have her remains, which is a big step. There's so many families. Like, look, tomorrow is the sentencing for Trezell and Jacqueline West. Those are the monsters that adopted Sincere and Classic, Orrin and Orson West in California. They don't even have those kids recovered, the bodies recovered. So I just made that comparison because, you know, there's nothing there. So at least here we have this. Yeah, Rebecca says it's bittersweet. Yeah,
definitely. But at least they can give her a proper burial now. And, you know, pay their respects. You know, still like 9/11, more than half the people have still yet to been identified.
Yeah, Ed doesn't have any time to have a channel by himself. Well, he does have a channel. Well, he's my co-host. He's here with me, but he is too busy teaching everyone his profession. Absolutely, he's very busy. Ed's busy, but he takes the time out to come here. Listen, I text him on a minute's notice, and he was like, "Okay, let's go." Less than 30 minutes notice, and Ed was ready.
That's part for the course for Ron, folks. If you didn't know that.
Yeah, sometimes it's like 5 minutes. At least I gave him 30 minutes.
Ron's a YouTube junkie.
So hashtag Ron, hashtag Ed. Michelle Enriquez says it's a dead giveaway, people, that Barry has not stated that his wife's remains were found. Listen, I'm glad that you brought that up, because a news reporter, and I think we played it a couple of times, a news reporter said that he reached out to Barry Morphew's defense attorney, and she didn't know that Suzanne Morphew's remains were recovered. That means he didn't know. So that tells you something. Those of you who are internet detectives, you could just put 2 and 2 together there. Chaffee County Sheriff, Colorado Bureau of Investigation, and everybody and anyone who's investigating this case, they didn't reach out to Barry Morphew. They didn't reach out to his attorney, and they didn't do that for a reason. So, yeah, here's K Smeg says, what happens next?
It'll be a painful investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys and girls, again, Ed and I are asking you quick to please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, share this video, follow us on social media, all one word, DutyRon. That's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Now it's called X, and TikTok. Yeah, Ed and I, we're on TikTok. We're uploading informative educational videos. But again, I want you to get around some of the great ones that are out there searching for the missing, like Chaos Divers, like United Search Corps, like first and foremost, EquiSearch Midwest. Dave Rader and Twyla are doing God's work, and they're out there all the time. Yeah, Julie, I don't ever sleep. It's true. I don't get a lot of sleep. But yeah, follow all the people who are doing God's work and that's out there trying to search for the missing. She says, Ed, do you dance? That's for you, Ed.
I didn't see any Ed. It says, do you dance? She doesn't refer to me. She may be talking to you.
She's referring to who's full screen right now on the screen.
Okay, yeah.
Ed does dance. I saw him today dance.
You can dance if you want to.
Let's go to the chat here quickly because we're getting ready to wrap up. But I saw something, DutyRon, that gave me the chills. Spot on. I'm not sure what it was, but here's a question from Kim S. And she's going right back into the investigation. How long can investigators retrieve cell tower data for? Can multiple years go by and still be able to retrieve data?
I don't know. Let me ask the National Security Administration.
Guess what? We'll go to Tiffany Leonard. She's our cell phone and data and computer expert. I'll pose that question to her.
Way to go.
So Carrie's going to follow us on all social media. That's great. Ed Wallace here's from Dawn Marie, one of our great ones, great moderator, great friend. Ed Wallace, you're awesome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Dawn Marie. So are you.
Yeah, she's awesome. All right, I want to say thank you to the moderators, the replay viewers, the folks who've given super chat, the ones we got like 4 or 5 messages, people buying us cups of coffee. Thank you for buying us cups of coffee. We're going to stay close to this investigation. We're going to keep following it. If you have any information or anything that pops up, send it over to dutyron.com. Ed and I like to look at dutyron.com and see all of your messages that comes in, because that's what helps us. That kind of guides us to what you guys want to see. And if you have show ideas, send them on to dutyron.com. Hold on. I saw Team Brittany. I just want to get to some DutyRon. They have a pretty good case against the husband before, but they just didn't have the remains yet. Yes. We talked several times about this.
Well, the Colorado Bureau of Investigation was in disagreement with the sheriff's office, and the sheriff was pushing ahead, even though the CBI was telling them to slam on the brakes.
Right.
Well, thank God it didn't go to trial, and then he got acquitted, because then to go after him now would be double jeopardy. So if he is in fact involved in this,
right.
Okay.
but they left it open to where they can go back and reinstitute the charges against Barry Morphew. So that was clear, and they were very clear about that. H. Cook, she says, if Ron is YouTube junkie, Ed is a Google junkie. That's correct. That's a good one.
Only to answer your questions in the chat.
Yeah.
The comment section.
T, thank you for becoming a member. ATS News, always hanging in there, always being a member. I saw earlier Mystery Maven Jess. So thank you to Mystery Maven. We have the sentencing tomorrow. I know that she'll be covering it. I'll be covering it as well. If Ed's available. If he's not, I'll grab attorney Melanie Little, who she's already committed to covering that for us and with us. So we're going to be seeing, we have to see what they get sentenced to tomorrow. Tomorrow is sentence day. So let's look out for that. Michelle Enriquez is saying, I thank you too so much for bringing these cases out for us to learn about. Let's all pray for Suzanne's family and loved ones, and especially her daughters. If it comes out that their father is actually guilty. The daughters are standing right with the father, and they're holding hands and locking arms with him. So it is what it is. Here's Coexist at DutyRon. Yes, dropped all the charges. Worth prejudice. Yeah.
No, without prejudice.
Without. So I misread that. Without. Yes. Correct. All right, guys and girls, on behalf of Ed Wallace and DutyRon, Ed, do you have anything else that you want to add to this or no?
Yeah, you want to show some pictures from Roland Roaster?
I didn't download them. I can show them. I could show them on my phone. I can show them. Hold on. Let's show. This is from Ed and I today. We got together. We did some goofy stuff and took a couple of selfies. What else did we do, Ed? We took pictures of our food. Right? I got to go full screen with this. All right. So this is from our outing today. We got together, Ed and I.
Hold on. Yeah, that's blurry. There you go.
Oh
no, not that way. There you go. That's in the parking lot of a famous roast beef fast food restaurant in Brooklyn called Roll and Roaster.
I was making a funny face there. Ed with his chicken, with the chicken.
What chicken?
Not
roast
chicken.
beef.
No,
roast beef.
Yeah, roast beef. What am I talking about?
Yeah,
Ed smiling.
Unfortunately, you have like all these little thumbnails of photographs through the meat.
Okay,
there you go.
Get rid of them. Just one.
Okay.
So you asked for it. You got it, Ed. Thank you.
All right.
I wish that we would have gotten someone to take a picture of us, but we did all that ourselves. So two old guys sitting down, having a little bit of something to eat and drink. Here's Isabella saying, Ron, no hat. The sun wasn't really blaring, and we got in our cars pretty quick and got out of there. All right. Again, on behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, we want to thank you for joining. Much love and respect to everybody here in the chat. Appreciate the super chatters, the super thanks, everybody who supports Patreon, cups of coffee, all that good stuff. Hit the thumbs up, subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Stay safe, stay prepared, watch your six.
Thank you, Ed. Good night, everybody. Peace.